I'm with Rosie Ross from Repairing the Breach. Now, Rosie, what is Repairing the Breach?
We are repairing the breach that was made between Britain and Israel, particularly during the British Mandate period from 1920 to 1948. Britain went back on promises that she had made, on international treaties that she had signed, and severely limited the number of Jewish people who were allowed into their homeland at the time of the Holocaust and after the Holocaust.
So do you apologise for what Britain has done?
We do. We do it publicly, we do it privately, and of course on the tour that I'm going to speak about, we were able to do it publicly.
And how do people feel when they hear an apology from what the British people done during the Holocaust?
Often people are surprised. Often people say it's not really your fault. But sometimes there are very moving moments with people and they're in tears and it goes very deep. And I think every time we say it, it makes a difference.
Now, recently you've been to Germany, Amsterdam and Cyprus. Tell us about what you've been doing there.
We had a special tour to Germany. I say we had a special tour. We were included in a special tour to Germany. It was called In the Footsteps of the Exodus. Exodus being the Exodus 1947 ship that's iconic in Israel's history and is not so well known in Britain. Britain basically was trying to stop the ship get into the land of Israel, then known as Palestine. And we, as the British nation, the British Navy, were responsible for the deaths of 3 Jewish people and the injuries of scores of Jewish people. And when I say Jewish people, these were refugees after the Holocaust. We're talking about 4,500 and more Jewish Holocaust survivors.
So where did you go?
We were in Berlin. We went to different places associated directly with the Holocaust. We went to Bergen-Belsen, but we also went to a place outside Berlin where you could see the rails, where trains went to different concentration camps. And we were with 2 German Christians who had joined us for that event, invited them to join us. And there were representatives of the Jewish Agency and of the Israeli Embassy at a special commemoration we held in Berlin. When I say we, again, this was largely organized by the Israelis themselves who led our tour. Itzik Rosman is the son of Mordecai Rosman, who was one of the leaders on the Exodus ship and is very much regarded as a hero. And the other leader's mother was a nurse on board the deportation ships after the passengers from the Exodus were put on British deportation ships and forced to leave their homeland in Israel.
And did you have Holocaust survivors going with you? And I also understand that you had a mayor with you as well.
We had 2 who were actual survivors of the Exodus ship. One of them was 3 years old on board the ship. His parents were survivors. And Dov was 10 years old on board the ship. His parents were survivors. And then we also had with us Yona Yahav, the mayor of Haifa, whose wife's parents had been on the Exodus ship.
And one of them got an opportunity to see where they were born. Tell us about that.
Yes, that was very, very special. Benjamin, who came with us, was actually born in Germany because he was held in one of the British detention camps. The British took the passengers from the Exodus on board these prison-like ships back to Germany. It was horrific for them, going back to the land where their families had been held, some killed in concentration camps. So they were held not in concentration camps, but in these detention camps in North Germany near Hamburg. The camps were called Amstau, Pöppendorf, Sengwarden and Emden. and we visited the site of each of those camps.
It must have been quite a moving time, was it?
It was a very, very special time. And I think for Verity Steele and I, who represented Britain and represented British Christians, it was so special how we were accepted into the group. They recognized that we had come to express our sorrow and shame, which we did formally and informally. And I think the fact we spoke Hebrew really helped in forging bonds. There were a couple of women who were able to say, well, our mother had really hated the British more than the Germans. So people were very open with us. And it was a very, very meaningful time for us and for them. For them, it was going back to family roots, and they were incredibly moved to be part of this special trip.
Did you have an opportunity to go into the schools?
I personally didn't go into a school, but I met a number of young people from a German high school. In fact, all of us met these young people, although I had the privilege of sitting next to them at dinner. These were sixth formers who had been invited by two of their teachers to join us for a civic reception at the town hall in Emden. The mayor of Emden had invited us all, thanks to the work of the two teachers who are working to commemorate the whole heritage of the Exodus ship in particular. Obviously, it's part of a more general Holocaust education. Some of the members of our group, the leaders of our group, and two of the younger members of our group did actually go into the school and talked with the young people in the German school. And I found that very inspiring as we're planning an exchange between a British school and an Israeli school.
You had another British member with you on the tour. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, Verity Steele came with me. She's been part of Repairing the Breach for many years now. And her uncle, Douglas Steele, was a seaman on board the HMS Chequers, which actually attacked the Exodus ship. So she feels a deep remorse for what her uncle was involved in. And she also has a tremendous heart for the Jewish people and has done a lot of academic research, has a PhD, because she's researched the pioneer organization Bachad, which spanned a number of decades during the last century.
So it was very important that she was part of the trip as well.
It was very important.
And you had the opportunity to lay a wreath. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, Verity and I were able to lay a wreath in the Jewish cemetery in Emden. There's also a memorial to all those Jews who died in the Holocaust at this cemetery. And we were able to lay a wreath on behalf of Love Never Fails, the coalition of British UK Christians who support Israel. So that was a very special moment, and Verity had handcrafted this wreath.
And you went over to Amsterdam as well. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, that was the end of our trip. So some of the tour group were too tired to really do much because we had had a very exhausting itinerary. But there were 6 of us who had the strength to go and visit the Jewish quarter, and they were very impacted by the Holocaust memorial there, and also very impacted by meeting a Dutch Christian couple who work with Ebenezer, who just wanted to be there to show their solidarity with Israel. And that was very meaningful. We sat and had lunch with the Israeli group and our Dutch Christian friends in the town square where there were 2 Palestinian flags flying. And we were told that if an Israeli flag flew there, there would be a huge rumpus.
Wow. That must have been quite shocking in some ways, knowing exactly what's happened in the Second World War.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The times are dark today in Europe, and we want to be those who stand in the opposite spirit to those in the past who were silent and were not standing with the Jewish people.
How important was it for the group to meet Christians? You've met German Christians, you've met Dutch Christians as well. How important is that?
I think it's very important in the work of breaking down the barriers between Christians and Jews, which, as we all know, are centuries old because of attitudes in the church, attitudes through the preaching of replacement theology, where the church is said to replace Israel, and through things that even in our own families are a part of our own families. I've been living in Israel and supporting the Jewish people for many years, but God has spoken to me about my own family history and how, there's been a lot of replacement theology, which I've just explained, in my family. And I've had to face the fact that even as a Christian, I have felt superior to Jewish people. So the Lord works in us all because these anti-Semitic roots in Europe and in the church are very deep, and I've had to face them myself.
And you went over to Cyprus. Tell us a bit about the trip you did in Cyprus.
This was with Ebenezer. So Colin and I were part of a round table gathering, time of prayer with other Christians who see that in the future Cyprus will be very key for Aliyah, and that there is a belief that it will be used as a hub for Aliyah when people can't get into Israel. So we were praying and preparing the way for that, and we also had the opportunity to meet the rabbi from Larnaca Jewish community, because some of the Christians who are part of that group have been building relationship with the synagogue in Larnaca. And so that was actually very moving to meet Rabbi Levi. And he spoke about what had happened in Cyprus during the 12-day war and how so many Israelis had fled to Cyprus and how they were caring for them, looking after them. And also at the time of October the 7th as well. He had also lost a brother in the war in Gaza. So it was a very special time, and just special to be there as Christians, showing our support for the Jewish people at this time.
We see what happened during the Second World War, what happened in the Holocaust to the Jewish people. Are you worried today about the way that Europe is changing and also the way that Britain is changing as well, and the anti-Semitism that's there?
Yes, I'm very concerned, especially since the latest statement by the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, unilaterally recognizing a Palestinian state. I feel it's an appeasement of Muslims. I feel we're going back to where we were in the 30s, when British policy in Palestine, as it was then known, was a similar policy of appeasement. And of course, it's much, much easier to appease than to speak out. But sadly, I think that's where we're at.
You are repairing the breach and you're apologising for what Britain has done during the Holocaust time. Does it feel like now that you have to be apologising all over again because of what our British government is doing now today?
There is a sense, and I think that as I've drawn the parallel between the 30s and what was going on then and what's going on now, I think, yes, we do need to say sorry to the people of Israel for how our governments are treating them at this time.
Why do you do what you do?
I think I'm motivated by the Lord because I've always had a love for history, and I've always had a love for people who've gone through a lot of suffering. And I think many of those we meet, they and their families have gone through a lot of suffering. And I've always had a heart for reconciliation. And I think it's so important that we as Christians can seek to build reconciliation with Jewish people who went through what they did in the 30s and 40s at the hands of our governments.
What is your prayer today for British-Jewish relations?
My prayer is that there can be a restoration of good relations between Israel and Britain, and that the government or a future government will turn away from the policies that they're pursuing at this moment. I think one other thing that I'd like to mention, and this was a very memorable moment in the tour, we were being received in German naval base, which is basically the same place where the British had held the the Jewish people, the Jewish survivors of the Exodus, in a camp. It's now a German naval base. And we as a group were received in this German naval base, again, by the mayor of Sengwarden. And one of those on the town council spoke to me and introduced me to a gentleman who turned out to be from Iran but had lived in Germany for 30 years, having fled from the regime. And he was passionate to thank us as those coming from Israel for what Israel had done for his country, Iran, in the recent 12-day war. He just understood the significance of that. And it was very precious that he spoke in front of our group.
Well, Rosie, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you.